Well, it's an interesting question because I have a life coach that taught me about a conversation of possibility, and what that means is you sit in the room with your teammates, and if you can create something that doesn't exist, what does it look like? So there's no negative talk around it. So when I first came here, my goal was to create kind of the model program in all of college athletics, and we came up with a vision of being the most respected program in the nation. We graduate every student athlete and compete for championships, and that's been the driver behind where we are today. Because it's simple, you can remember it. The most respected is about being great people, great character. 100% graduation, we're about 98%, which is in the top 1%, and then competing for championships, and that has sustained us through the time. And but it started with this premise of a conversation of possibility. Yeah, it's interesting. When I first came here, I came from the University of California. We had world-class facilities, and I can remember in my first article that Kevin Mack wrote, I talked about, the facilities looking like a bad high school, and Father Smith wasn't happy with me, but I was being honest about it. And if you want to be a world-class institution and compete for national and Big East championships and Hockey East championships, you have to have a wow factor when you bring a big-time athlete here, because you have one chance to make a first impression. So we started small. I can remember we coined Friar Friday, and one day we literally went around and picked up all the trash that was in our organization. We didn't have any pictures on the wall. The paint was brown. And we just started with little things and then built it over time. And then I created these visuals of new fields and facilities, and I kept them in my office because I'm a visual person. And as people would come in, they'd say, "What's that?" I said, "That's kind of the future." And then it turned into a conversation of possibility. Then we got people to donate money, and with great support, you can see the facilities we have here. So it's one of the reasons we're able to recruit big-time athletes, but also keep and sustain big-time college coaches. Yeah, it's huge. I'm not sure many people appreciate what a big deal it has been for Providence College. If you think about the vision, and really it was Father Morris, he told me the story, 50 years ago when they needed $50,000 to join the Big East. That was a lot of money, but he took the risk to do that. And the return on investment is amazing. Think about this year, Sweet 16 run, Ed's the National Coach of the Year run, national TV, Fox Sports. You're getting tens of millions of impressions over that, and you couldn't afford to buy that kind of publicity. And if we're a tuition-driven institution and our brand is important, it's a lot of the reasons I think our admissions numbers are up because Providence College has a national and international profile, I believe, because of the success in men's basketball and the Big East. They are recognized as two of the best coaches in their sports in the nation by none. So that speaks volume about what we've been able to create here. They're also great spokespeople for the organization. Ed is about as good as anybody I've ever been around when he gets in front of a microphone, and it's all about us, we together, Friar family, everything about our vision about being most respected. And Nate obviously just turned down a big-time job to stay in Friartown because he's won a national championship, been to a Frozen Four. But it shows that one of my goals was always to have Providence College be a destination and not a stepping stone. Great coaches would come here and leave because they didn't feel they could sustain it because the organization wasn't committed to it, but because of the top down, from Chairman of the Board of Trustees to Father Scar to Father Shanley, all the way down to every teammate here, we're committed to success. I love Ray Treacy. I sit in my office and look out the window and see him out there morning, noon, and night through snowstorms, and they're plowing it off. But I tell people he's the greatest coach in the history of Providence College Athletics, bar none. Doesn't get the recognition and the profile that basketball and hockey gets, but if you think about what Ray has done, he won 2 national championships, right, without a track. Right? He's got Olympic gold medalists, he's got people running around the world, and just an amazing guy. And he's as good now as he's ever been. So he's an institutional treasure. He's a great guy, loves Providence College, but yeah, he's a master at his craft and just a really special guy. And just the brogue alone is worth the price of admissions to hang out with Ray. Some of my favorite memories was we were in Boston and we got on the bus with the players as we drove to the Garden to compete for the national championship. And I took my wife on the bus, and so she's the only woman on the bus at the time, and she didn't really want to be on the bus, so we sat there. Dead silence. You get on a bus before you play a national championship game, you could hear a pin drop. And as we're driving through the tunnel, all of a sudden, this video pops up on the video screen. And you might have seen this video, but it was a pump video that was put together to get the guys in the right state. And it showed all the highlights and had this really dramatic voice behind it. And as I was watching it, and the police were in front, and the sirens and everything were going, and I'm sitting here playing for the national championship, I found myself starting to cry. Like I knew that this was really a special moment. And I looked over at my wife, and she was crying as well. And it ended as we got off the bus. We got off the bus, and there was a line of Friar people cheering and high-fiving. And I'll remember that the rest of my life, because it was like going into battle, but it brought out every emotion. And then to win the national championship and be in that locker room, there's not many things, if anything, in sport that will ever top that for me. And then the other one that I remembered vividly was when we lost in the ultimately to Kansas, the national champs in basketball, the Sweet 16, and walking into a locker room which is really sad and down and just, you know, really devastated because we didn't achieve the goal, and guys are crying, grown men are crying, and we're all in there together because we just, you know, put it all on the court, and just feeling like what an amazing feeling it was. And then have Ed to walk in and say, hey, hold your heads up. Be proud of what you've accomplished. These are life's lessons. You got to pick yourself up. And he talked about graduate, graduate, graduate. And just really floated above the wins and losses and gave context to what they had achieved and the lessons learned in those moments of defeat, because we had nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, those are two things that will last forever with me. And that's the great thing about sport. It provides you with an opportunity to bring people together in a common goal. Win or lose is still one of the greatest things ever. It's part of the vision that we have always had, is you use sport to teach the core values that are going to make you successful for life. I mean, you're putting on the line every day, you got to compete, and you're going to lose. It's about honesty, integrity, hard work, perseverance, mental toughness. How do you deal with failure? How do you be a good teammate? And you get to do that. It's like a laboratory every single day. And Ed and our coaches are masters at taking those moments, even when you're in pain, and turning it into a life's lesson. Well, I love our women's programs for a number of reasons. My mom was a high school field hockey and basketball player and taught me as a young child about sport with my dad, so I always admired and respected her. But she didn't have the opportunities because there was no Title IX, right? And I had two daughters that played. My wife was a volleyball, basketball player, and I was an athletic director of the women's college. So I understood that it was really important to give women those equal opportunities. What I'm really proud of is, you know, the resources that we spend. If you look at how they travel, you look at the equipment, the trainers, the strength and conditioning, the locker room, everything about it is completely equal. In fact, we spend more money on financial aid on the women's programs than we do on the men's programs, and we've had great success with our women's programs.